of cardiac arrest happen in the home environment. So it's a family member is probably who you may or may not be in CPR. Okay? So we all know the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, yeah?
Yeah.
So the heart attack, yeah, we're going to feel that pain and, you know, we're going to be okay for a period of time. But ultimately it can lead to cardiac arrest. Yeah, sure, we'll just chat about it. Yeah, we'll chat about it rather than watching the video here in relation to scene safety. So scene safety for all of us is very, very important, okay? So we have one patient that's on the ground here, okay? We don't want to have two patients. So if we walk into an environment that's dangerous for us, okay, we can end up being another patient on the ground. What kind of other things do you think we might be looking out for from a health and safety point of view? Electricity.
Where the person falls on the ground, if it's beside a road or...
Okay, yeah, anything else? Water. Sorry?
Trip or slip hazards.
Trip or slip, yeah, okay. I suppose one of the big ones that, you know, that we come across, inner city we call it, is needles. Okay? So you come in and you want to help this person, you know, you need to be looking as you're walking into the environment. You don't want to kneel down and then suddenly go, oh, what was that? Okay? And now we have a needle stick injury. Again, you know, when we're going to check responsiveness of this patient, we just need to be careful because again, they may have, we'd say needles. Other things, you know, like if there's shards of glass in the ground, again, you don't want to be kneeling down onto it, but you know, electricity, most certainly. You know, if we thought this person was after being electrocuted, they could still be live, so we need to make sure that we isolate whatever electricity. You know, again, we're in we'd say, a commercial kind of kitchen environment here. There may be chemicals that are used here for cleaning that are, we'd say, toxic, and that person became overcome by the chemicals and has collapsed. We now go in, and now we become overcome by those chemicals or whatever, and now we have two patients. So again, just as you walk in, you know, your brain needs to be active and looking around and just see, you know, why is this person lying on the ground? Is there another reason why they're lying there? Yeah. So your own safety is paramount.
We might just do a quick bit of responsiveness, so if we come across somebody who has collapsed.
So yeah, so we come across someone that's collapsed. So yeah, so we'll approach the casualty. You know, ideally we'll kind of walk towards looking at the patient on the ground or whatever. And again, you know, we can be calling to them, hello, hello, hello. Again, just make sure there's nothing untoward on the ground, okay? Now, what we need to do is we need to tap that person, kind of on their shoulders, and we need to be quite vocal in what we're saying. So we normally will go, hello, 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 can you hear me? And we get down close enough that we're kind of nearly shouting into their ears, because they could be deaf, okay? Or they could be, again, they could be after having a few pints last night, or they could have had some form of drugs or whatever in their system, and they're kind of sleeping their way through it. Okay? So we need to be, you know, tapping and quite vocal to try to wake up this person. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and assess to see, are they breathing? Okay? Now, we can do what we call a head tilt chin lift, where we're just tilting back that head a little bit, and what that does is it lifts the tongue off the back of the throat, okay? Because that could be impeding their breathing, okay? We're going to get down and we're just going to put our ear down close enough to their mouth, and your ear is quite sensitive and it should feel if someone is actually breathing. The other thing that we can do is we can just put our hand on their chest here, and we should feel a rise and a fall. Okay? The Americans, if we play it on the DVD, they do this what they call scanning, where they don't actually get on what we call the look, listen and feel. They just tend to stand here and they just scan up and down the body, and they're looking for rise and fall. That's fine if we're all in t-shirts or something like that, we'll see, yeah? But if we're wearing big bulky jackets and stuff like that, you know, it's going to be difficult to see is that person's chest moving. So as I say, we can just put our hand on the stomach here, we should actually feel, you know, between the stomach and the chest here, we should actually feel a little bit of rise and fall. And as I say, if we have our ear down close to them, we will hear. So, how long are we going to do this for?
10 to 20 seconds. Yeah, a couple of seconds.
What's a couple of seconds? 2 seconds?
Say about 10 seconds.
10 seconds, 20 seconds. Yeah.
As soon as you find out that they're breathing on that, what is the reality of God?
Yeah, within reason, yeah. So, we're all sitting here today. Okay, how often do you think we're taking a breath? Every half a second, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So if you breathe every half a second. So now I'm going to count every second, and you breathe you breathe twice every time I do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd be like this. Yeah. That's good. I mean, it's great to just even think about it. Yeah. So what would you think now? So knowing that. Now, the minute people start thinking about their breaths, they start to breathe a bit faster. But naturally, when you're calm, what would you think?
2 seconds.
Okay, so every 2 seconds, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah, but we don't breathe like
You don't breathe like that.
We just take it in like
Exactly. So how long do you think?
5 seconds.
yeah, you're breathing in and out about 5 seconds.
It's much slower than you think, yeah. About every 6 seconds. Yeah? About every 6 seconds when we're really relaxed, we take a breath. Nice and calm and out. And that's
does that vary for like build and
it definitely varies for me anyway. I think more air than all you guys. It does, of course it does, yeah. At 12 to 20 is the medical amount of breathing per minute. So what we're getting at, which is really important, and everybody gets this bit wrong, is that when you go to a patient and you go, hello, can you hear me? And you go down to look, so you look maybe in their mouth to see is there anything in the mouth because it's been choking. You listen with your ear and you put your hand on their chest. And we listen for up from between 6 to 10 seconds. So no longer than 10 seconds because we're wasting time. They definitely would have had a breath in that. And there's no point doing it before 6 seconds. Because they might have just had a breath, your ear goes down, and you go 1, 2, oh, they're not breathing, let's start CPR. We're not waiting long enough. Yeah? We need to wait those 6 seconds and no more than 10, because now we're just wasting time. They're definitely not breathing. And we have all this, we're allowed to wait this much time. It's okay to waste the 10 seconds and get this right. And that's what I said at the start. We want to teach you when you're to do CPR on a patient who is not breathing. Yeah? And we need to be 100% sure. We get a huge amount of call-outs where the patient is found, they ring 999, sorry, 112. I'm too old. They then activate us to go out because the call taker says, is the patient breathing? And they're going, oh my God, he's not breathing. And they call us, we head out there, and we find that there's other reasons. And we want to try and eliminate that. And there's no need for us to be called. They were actually breathing. And I tell the story, I was in a cinema once, movie blaring, couldn't hear anything. This girl started kind of screaming, her boyfriend had collapsed. We dragged him out onto the floor, and that's just a little thing. You always try and get a patient into an area where you have room to work on them. Not in a doorwell, not in a bedroom stuck between a bed. Get them out into the landing, spend that time bringing them into an area where we have access all around. Yeah, just use your head at the time. And we dragged them out onto the floor, and then we did a look, listen, and feel. And by putting our hand on their tummy, and by listening, we can actually, and by doing it in the right amount of time, which is how many seconds?
6.
And no more than?
10.
By doing that, even while the movie was playing in a dark place, we could actually hear the person breathing. And when you hear them breathing, you go, relax, great. I don't need to do CPR. I'm not at the last 10 minutes of their life. I now have time to deal with this. And it kind of calms you down a little bit. If you don't hear breathing, this is why we're doing the course today, you need to start CPR. And that by starting CPR, you're getting that blood around their body, you're keeping them alive, and you're giving them the best possible chance so that the ambulance is on its way and they bring the hospital to the patient. Yeah? And if they can't do anything, unfortunately it wasn't a good day for that person. So that's what we're trying to do, and so that's very important. When we get you to do this in a minute, I want to make sure that you're going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. It's quite a long time, isn't it? Everybody does this really fast. You're not going to know 100%. If you do that, we empower you, we give you the power to go, well, I heard no breathing between 6 and 10 seconds, this person is definitely not breathing, I'm definitely telling the emergency call taker that they're not breathing, I absolutely know they're not breathing, and I can do CPR on them. and it's really clean. Yeah? Great, sorry.
No. Any questions on that?
You're on about there one. I know your hands on the chest when you're going down for air, but if you're outside and the wind and this, very hard rate.
Yeah, so, yeah.
I still know your hand is there.
But if your hand is there, so you're using two means to actually assess the patient. Yeah.
So in that cinema on that day when the movie was still playing in the dark, we were on the steps, I could still hear him breathe.
Yeah.
Because my ear was right down to his mouth, my hand was on his chest, and I could hear him breathing still. And his breathing was really shallow and quite apart. But I knew from that and I honestly didn't know to that day, would I, like you, would I actually hear him?
Yeah.
And I did. I was 100% focused on it, and I could actually hear him breathing. And just to me, I'm telling you that on the day if it happens, that's what you're checking, and you will, even with the noise around you, you'll more than likely figure it out. If you have to spend a little bit longer just making sure, and like usually when you look at a person, you have a good idea anyway, right? And like we're really talking about people who've collapsed. If you see them collapse in front of you, that's even better. Not for them, obviously, but it's better because now you can say, well, they've collapsed. And like people will collapse. So if somebody might faint, but when you go down and just check them and you realise, they are breathing, I'm just telling you now, you then gotta go, that's great, they're breathing. Yeah. There might be something else wrong, but I have a little bit of time to deal with it. And it just calms you down when you come across it.
Yeah. But another question, drawing situations like that when the body, when something happens in the body, the heart will start racing, so you will know, with your breathing, the heart, the beat of the heart, and
so the heart,
sometimes it can slow down very slow, depending on the situation.
Yeah. Well, in particular, if people have taken drugs and stuff, their heart can still go, but they forget to breathe. But their heart won't go for much longer, because if they're not breathing and there's no oxygen getting in, the heart will also stop.
So CPR straight away.
So CPR if they're not breathing. Yeah. That's the general rule. And even if, so if you come across them at the instant it happened, you're right, you might actually feel a heart rate. But the thing is that they have stopped breathing and they will soon, their heart will stop.
Yeah, see, because you could get caught in that,
You could.
If you felt the heart and
so
the pulse,
So that's why I make it,
and you're dead.
So I make it easy for you. You don't have to worry about their heart. You don't have to take a pulse. All you have to do is check if they're breathing or not.
Yeah.
If they're not breathing, we're in trouble. If they're breathing, then we have a bit of time. Now they may stop breathing again. But that is one thing that you can decide. Are they breathing? So let's uncomplicate the whole thing. Yeah.
But the machine will also analyse everything anyway and tell you continuous chest compression.
It will, but imagine the person collapses and the machine is on the wall or it's in a car and you're going with your hands and you're going to start and you're going to check. And you have to also check, what a lot of people do, they go, hello, call an ambulance. And I go, why are you calling an ambulance? You haven't checked if they're breathing.
Yeah.
Now, it's okay to call an ambulance if somebody collapses because generally they shouldn't collapse anyway. But let's just spend 30 seconds making sure that we're 100% right. This person absolutely needs an ambulance, or I can do some help just prior to getting an ambulance called. So when you do get your defibrillator, we talk about that. We talk about putting it on straight away and it analysing the patient and telling us, as we don't touch it, because if we touch the patient, it'll analyse our heart rate. It'll analyse the patient's heart rate and it'll tell us whether the patient requires a shock or not. And even if they don't require a shock, we continue to do CPR. CPR is just taking over the heart and pushing blood around their body, which gives oxygen and it goes to all their vital organs and it keeps them going until the ambulance gets them and can administer other medications and stuff.
And just as simple enough, remember, touched on a while ago, what you're saying about the breathing, just by the head tilt, chin lift alone, it actually save a person's life. Just by that little movement.
Yeah,
because it comes to be just dropping the airway. It's as simple as that, and if you just cast, and happy days.
So I read an article about a guy, he arrived with a load of cars and crashed. He went to the first car, the window was smashed, the guy was slumped over the wheel. He pushed him back and lifted up his head, and your man started to breathe. So even though your man was unconscious, but he was in a position where his airway was compromised, and so very simply he would have died, only for the fact that he pushed him back and pushed his head back, straight away cleared his throat, he started to breathe. and then he could move to the next person and the next person. So breathing is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you know, we're dealing with food in places here. You walk in, someone is lying on the ground, they could have consumed something, and it has blocked their airway, and they have now collapsed on the ground, and they're actually after choking. Yeah. So again, we'll go through it. We'll be talking about choking. But when you're doing your compressions, if we don't know why this person has collapsed, you know, it's no harm to have a quick look into that airway to see whether or not is there something in that airway. Equally, after you do the compressions, it could expel that piece of food or whatever that they may have collapsed with.
Like that now, you know, someone did choke and something.
Yes.
Do you still push here or do you push into the stomach here?
It depends. So we talk about that. So excellent question, but we talk about that if you don't mind in a minute. And I want to go back to our AED as well as to why, you know, we spoke about the AED and analysing and stuff like that. AEDs, when we come to them, they only work for specific rhythms on the heart. They don't work for every type of heart failure, we call it. They're looking for a specific rhythm that the heart is in, then they will work. If the heart isn't in that rhythm, they ain't going to work. We go back to your questions there in a minute.